Hi everybody. I thought I would make a really quick video to communicate to all of us within St John's Church a little bit about how we are reacting to COVID-19, coronavirus, whatever you want to call it, and the pandemic. Obviously, it's becoming clear that this is a really, really serious pandemic, and that while for many people in our population, it's not going to be a terribly serious illness. For some people, those who are elderly or particularly vulnerable or have underlying health conditions, this can be really serious and dangerous. And obviously, as Christians who care for one another and care especially for the vulnerable and the elderly, we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to take the risks seriously and proportionately as a church. So I just want to outline a couple of the things that we have been doing already and a couple of things that we are going to do a little more, and hopefully just with a view to reassuring us all. So let me begin with what we have done. About 2 weeks ago, as we started to realise what the issues were going to be and things, we decided to distribute communion in one kind only. That is to say, only distributing the bread at Holy Communion to avoid the risk of people catching infections or cross-contaminating by drinking from the same cup or dipping their fingers in the wine with tincture or any of those sorts of things. We thought we'd just avoid that by having bread only. And the teaching of the church has always been that if we receive the bread, we have received the full sacrament. We are fully fed and nourished by Jesus. And indeed, the diocese have also published some communication since then, backing that up and saying that's exactly the right thing to do. Then, as of last week, we also began to share the peace with one another when we celebrate Holy Communion without any contact. And we're fortunate that we have Dee and Delapo and others in our community who come and use British Sign Language to communicate with one another. So we thought this is a great opportunity for us all to share the peace with British Sign Language. And just to remind you, it's a really simple sign. You put your two fingers together like this with your fingers outstretched. Peace be with you. That's peace be with you. And so that's how we're going to share the peace for the time being. No hugs, no handshakes, just peace be with you. And we can say the words as well. That's a good thing to do. When we pray for one another, for the time being, we will not lay hands on one another and we'll just stand a little further apart. But we still want to be praying for one another and caring for one another. Now, to tell you about some other changes, we want to be a little bit more careful with our food hygiene and to avoid infection or cross-contamination. And so from this Sunday, we won't be serving any strawberries or grapes or apples, things which get put out and people might touch with their fingers and then leave aside and not eat. We will continue to serve healthy fruit, bananas, oranges with peelable skins, and we will be serving tea and coffee, but we're going to serve, and pastries, but we're going to serve from the back counter so that only the cafe team, who will be wearing latex gloves, will be serving drinks, and that just avoids everybody touching the plungers on the coffee pots and the risk of cross-contamination. Chris, who's a member of our staff, our team, has been working really hard to make sure that the building is as clean as it possibly can be. She has been disinfecting and using spray bleach on all of the door handles and light switches and all of the press pads where people go in and out of doors, trying to make sure that we are avoiding any germs, any of the viral germs sitting on surfaces. And can I remind you that regular hand washing is the advice of the government. Hand washing for 20 seconds. You could pray the Lord's Prayer. Some Christians are deciding to pray the Lord's Prayer in full while they wash their hands to make sure they keep doing it for long enough, using plenty of soap and warm water. And it's very hard to get hold of hand sanitizing gel at the moment. Lots of people have bought up all the stocks that are around. If we're able to get some, we will. But remember that it's hand sanitizing gel with at least 60% alcohol content, which will help to kill germs on your hands. Normal antibacterial gel or things like that won't necessarily make any difference. We're going to keep the situation under review and think about what we do. We want to be prayerful. We want to be full of hope and faith and confidence in God to bring us through this, but we also want to act wisely and sensibly. As somebody said, we believe in prayer, but we also believe in soap. Or someone else said, when you're caught in a storm, trust God, but keep rowing. So we want to turn to God. And where you have friends and neighbours who are really struggling with the anxiety or the panic, maybe this is a time when you can be praying for them especially and helping people know that there is a God who is sovereign, who sits on the throne. And in the words of that ancient divine, Julian of Norwich, all will be well and all manner of things will be well. So that's our hope, that's the direction we are headed. And in the meantime, if you know of people who are particularly vulnerable, people with underlying health conditions or the very elderly who need some support, phone them up, give them a call, pray for them over the telephone, ask whether they need you to drop anything round to their house, and do all that we can to keep one another safe and well. I hope that is helpful, and of course do contact me if you have any other questions or concerns.